Hello Internet, my name is Daniel and I love movies, at least when Hollywood doesn't totally ruin them. And today, I'm pretty excited because this is the first episode of our new show, Hollywood's Fixer-Uppers. On this show, we'll be taking a look at movies that weren't bad by any means, but were just a few tweaks away from being something really awesome. And no better way to start things off than with Pixar's latest movie. Today, I'm going to be exploring the one major problem with Cars 3 that nobody is talking about, as well as how they could have fixed it. That's all coming up. Alright, first off, I want to give a quick spoiler warning for those of you who have not yet seen the film. I will be going pretty deep into the story with this one, so if you haven't seen the film and you don't want anything to be spoiled for you, I would pause the video right now, then go see the movie, and come back and watch the rest of the video. And if you're looking for a review of the movie, that's not exactly what I'm going to be doing here, but I did do a spoiler-free and spoiler review of the movie, and you can get to those by clicking the card in the upper right-hand portion of the video, or by clicking the description underneath the video. And with that out of the way, let's get on to the video. So Cars 3 is the latest Pixar movie to be released, and while people aren't exactly loving the movie, they do seem to be enjoying it well enough. As of the recording of this video, the movie has a 68% score on Rotten Tomatoes and has raked in almost $310 million at the box office, which is well over its budget of $175 million. And that's all fine and good, but that $310 million mark actually places Cars 3 dead last in terms of Pixar movies' worldwide box office numbers. Yeah, Cars 3 lost out to The Good Dinosaur, which made $330 million worldwide. Now, I have to imagine that the disaster that was Cars 2 is partially to blame for this, but I also think that it's in part because the Cars franchise has never really been known to deliver that emotional punch that other Pixar franchises like Toy Story have. But I also don't think that that's really the biggest problem with Cars 3, because the first Cars movie pulled in about $550 million, and that one didn't have the same emotional punch as a Toy Story movie either. So no, I think the biggest problem with Cars 3 that nobody's talking about is the fact that it didn't deliver on what the marketing and trailers promised us. And you can go back and take a look at the trailers yourself if you want to, but every single one of them was building up how Lightning was going to be facing off with these young, new, hotshot racers led by Jackson Storm. And they were building up this rivalry between the two, and in fact, I think one of the trailers was actually even called Rivalry, if I'm not mistaken. But in the end, we didn't actually get to see the conclusion of that rivalry. We didn't really get to see Lightning face off with Jackson Storm. We got to see Cruz Ramirez face off with Jackson Storm. And as a result of this, the rest of the movie had to put a lot more emphasis on Cruz as a character, which took a little bit of the focus off of Lightning's character. And more importantly, perhaps, it actually took focus off of Jackson Storm's character as a villain because there was absolutely no prior relationship between Storm and Cruz. This means that the emotional weight and investment that we were supposed to be experiencing in the final race wasn't actually there. The best they could do was go off of that lack of confidence angle that Cruz was dealing with for a majority of the movie when Storm tried to psych her out at the end. Which, admittedly, might have worked if Cruz and Storm had had any prior interactions in the film. So how could Pixar fix this? Well, allow me to take a minute and weave a bit of a fan fiction for you, and let's see what Cars 3 could have been. Now, one thing that I want to get out of the way right now is that the goal of the movie is still to have Cruz Ramirez in the final race. Now, I know what I just said about the marketing material not giving us what it promised, the Lightning versus Jackson Storm, but that's a fault of the marketing material, not necessarily the film. And conceptually, the Cruz versus Jackson Storm thing worked just fine. However, we do want to give Cruz a little bit more of an emotional connection with the audience and more of a historical connection with Jackson Storm like I was talking about earlier, so that when we get to the final race, the audience will hopefully feel a little bit more invested in the outcome. And I actually did kind of like the angle that the filmmakers were trying to go for with Cruz. She became a trainer because she didn't feel like she was able to cut it as a racer. However, this doesn't give us the connection to Jackson Storm that we want. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to have Jackson Storm be the reason that Cruz doesn't race anymore. Instead of Cruz basically getting psyched out by the engines of the other racers, Jackson Storm will be the one to get inside her head. And he'll do more than just psych her out. He'll intimidate her and trash talk her so relentlessly when she was young that she just won't be able to take it anymore. She'll break down and quit racing. This could also give us a little bit of an insight to Jackson Storm's personality as a villain. In the end of Cruz's flashback, he'd say something to the effect of, "If you can't handle this, then what are you doing here? Trash talk and intimidation, it's just part of the game." And that, of course, would lead to Cruz quitting. So with that out of the way, let's get into the actual story of the film. From the beginning of the film up until about the Rusty's training center scene could play out exactly as it did in the original Cars 3 release. However, Cruz Ramirez is not the peppy, happy-go-lucky, slogan-shouting trainer, and she doesn't make old jokes about Lightning McQueen, because with the exception of the drip pan, not a lot of them hit for me. And because it's not that important to her character. In fact, the idea of this first meeting between Cruz and Lightning should be to show that Cruz is a character in denial about her own desires to still be a racer. We don't need any of the characters to actually come out and say this, but based on how her face looks and how she reacts to Lightning, who is still kind of a hero to her, it is very clear to the audience that being a racer is still what Cruz wants deep down. And since Lightning is also a character in denial, he will still go a bit too far to catch up with Jackson Storm on the racing simulator. Still funny. So we'll keep that. Meanwhile, Cruz shows herself to be extremely talented on all the machines and even nearly breaks Jackson Storm's speed record on the racing simulator while showing Lightning how to use it. This piques Lightning's interest, of course. Now at this point, I do feel that I should probably address the Mr. Sterling character. Now on the surface, I don't mind the idea of a guy trying to use Lightning's legacy to cash in. But I could do without yet another mean CEO billionaire type character. I mean, haven't we seen enough of those? So in my version, Mr. Sterling is kind of a boxing promoter type character. And he has actually begun to advertise Lightning's next race as his sort of farewell tour, saying that if he doesn't win, his career is over. He's not necessarily cashing in on Lightning's legacy, or at least not Lightning's legacy alone, he's cashing in on the sport itself. And this promotion catches Jackson Storm's attention, and it actually gets him to come over to the Rusty's training center. And during his visit, he hints at his past with Cruz Ramirez, smugly telling her things like, "Those who can't do, teach." And this really hits Cruz hard. And Lightning steps in because he's become increasingly angry, both for Cruz and at Jackson Storm. And he has actually been looking for an opportunity to go at Storm since their first race. So Lightning steps in to put a stop to Storm, and as the argument intensifies, Lightning revs his engines at Storm with everything he's got. Storm sighs as if this really isn't worth his time, and in return, effortlessly outdoes Lightning's rev with one of his own, then smiles and backs away. No more words need be said, his message was sent clearly. After trying and failing to comfort an inconsolable Cruz, Lightning goes back to Radiator Springs, still a bit discouraged by the argument with Storm. He talks to Mater about whether he actually does want to retire or not because Storm is just clearly bigger and faster and stronger than Lightning, and he's no longer sure if he's even capable of winning the race. And here, Mater still stumbles into his suggestion of using Doc Hudson's trainer, Smokey, just like he did in the movie because, well, it worked there and it was kind of funny. So Lightning still goes to meet Smokey, and we get that scene where Lightning learns that racing wasn't the best part of Doc's life, training was the best part of Doc's life. And this gets Lightning to start thinking about Cruz's unfulfilled potential in a whole different light, and he decides to go get Cruz and bring her back with him to Smokey. And Cruz and Lightning then undertake the training, and Lightning initially does well, perhaps even breaking some of his own personal records, but he quickly realizes that Cruz is doing exceptionally well. And as he watches just the radiant joy in Cruz's face, Smokey's words start coming back to him. And that gives Lightning the idea to have Cruz take his spot in the big race. But he doesn't tell her yet because he knows that Cruz isn't quite confident enough to hear it and accept it. Yet. However, he does still try to boost her confidence a little bit by telling her that she could really be a good racer someday. And Cruz, of course, still being that kind of shy and unconfident character at this point, says something to the effect of, "No, I really can't." Lightning tries to press her, but she continues to say, "No, I can't, it's just not possible," until Lightning eventually asks, "Well, why not?" And then Cruz reveals her backstory. She weaves a tale about how her and Jackson Storm used to be racing buddies, training together on the dirt tracks with big dreams of the Piston Cup. However, at some point, with both of them being highly touted prospects, Jackson Storm begins bullying her and trash-talking her like we discussed before, because he perceived her to be better than him. He kept mentally breaking her down until Cruz eventually just couldn't take it anymore and disappeared, seemingly never to be seen again. After this story is told, it's quite clear to Lightning that Cruz's major problem is nothing more than just a lack of confidence in herself, and that shows itself particularly when dealing with trash talkers. And it occurs to him that he knows the perfect place to give Cruz some confidence: the Demolition Derby. Now, I know that might sound a bit odd at first, but since the Demolition Derby was depicted as being more of the underground of the racing circuit, I don't think it's altogether unreasonable to think that there would be some sort of underhanded tactics used in that arena. I mean, come on, you've got a school bus of death as your champion, and explosions are going off all over the track at all times. That character and that track would be great intimidators. And if you could survive them, you can survive anything that those racers are going to throw at you. And remember, the point is to give Cruz more confidence in herself. So Lightning takes her to the Demolition Derby, and just like in the film, Cruz does reasonably well and makes it through, but she's not exceptional by any means. However, you do start to see her gain confidence, especially after Lightning points out to her how well she did when she managed to just ignore all the intimidating factors and all the explosions and the school bus of death and just drive. This leads us into a training montage during which we see Lightning and Smokey teaching Cruz how to draft properly, how to weave through various obstacles, assuming the Demolition Derby wasn't enough for that, of course, and how to recognize when an opposing racer is getting desperate. This will be a good way to have Lightning personally teach something to Cruz that will actually come in handy against Jackson Storm specifically. Because I could really see Jackson Storm pulling a Chick Hicks from the first Cars movie if the race started slipping away from him. And Lightning could also teach her some tricks that he learned in the first movie, like turning right to go left, drifting, and perhaps even driving backwards if we can work it into the final race without being too cheesy or repetitive. Admittedly, I'm not quite sure about that last one because they did do it in Cars 1 and we have already got the wall flip as this movie's awesome move. So maybe not the driving backwards, but we'd have to see in the writing process if it worked. Anyway, back to the movie. And as a way to visually show the audience that Lightning has found his new home as a mentor, we can have a shot where Doc's old trainer Smokey smiles knowingly at Lightning as he's watching Cruz drive, and Lightning returns the smile in kind. And I should also note that during this training montage, we do have Cruz hearing about Doc's wall flip, just like it happened in the film, so that way it doesn't come out of nowhere in the final race. Okay, so on the day of the big race, Lightning finally tells Cruz that she is actually going to be the one racing in Lightning's place. Cruz is, of course, understandably a little bit shocked, and the lack of confidence thing comes back a little bit, but Lightning manages to talk her into it by reminding her of how well she's done with the training, the Demolition Derby, and even the simulator early in the film. So Cruz takes Lightning's spot. And now Jackson Storm, being the arrogant jerk that he is, decides he can hang back and just torment Cruz for a few laps. He does this until he gets to the point where it's quite clear to him that Cruz is done, she's no longer going to be a threat in the race, and then he laps the field. And after Jackson Storm torments Cruz to the point where she is seemingly mentally dropped out of the race, Lightning gives her a bit of a pep talk, making her realize that Storm knows that Cruz is actually better than he is, and he's just trying to take her out of the race, just like he did all those years ago on the dirt tracks. This realization that Storm has been bullying her all these years because deep down he actually knows that she's the better racer restores her confidence in her own abilities and allows her to catch up to him. And once Cruz does catch up to Storm, he pulls back and torments her a little bit more again, and here you can see on Cruz's face, she's just had enough. She's very determined, she starts pulling away from Jackson Storm, and when Storm gets desperate, just as we knew he would, and finally tries to ram her into the wall, she flips over him, and it is on. The rest of this race will basically just be a brutal one-on-one duel, with all the things we've had in the movie, from car crashes, similar to the Demolition Derby, creating a bit of an obstacle course for them to get through, to drifting, to drafting, and maybe even Storm's more desperate actions from him, all coming into play. Until on the final turn of the final lap, Storm, having exhausted his entire bag of tricks, realizes that he has lost and there's nothing he can do about it. Cruz pulls away and Storm gives up on the race. Afterwards, he finds Cruz and says that she made him realize something in this race. Even though Storm was winning all this time, he really wasn't having fun racing. And since Cruz was his old racing buddy, and racing with her was the last time that he can remember truly loving racing, he asks Cruz if he can train with her again and rediscover his love for racing. Cruz sees that this is actually a genuine realization on the part of Jackson Storm, and she accepts his offer, and we have a flash forward at the end of the film showcasing Cruz and Jackson Storm having a strong camaraderie with each other as they race the other racers just like Lightning did at the beginning of the film. All is well, the series is wrapped up, roll credits. So there you go, that was Cars 3, Hollywood fixer-upper style, and I think this gets it a little bit closer to the movie that we were all hoping to see. I mean, sure, Lightning still didn't actually face off with Jackson Storm at the end of the movie, but for what we got, I think it's a much stronger showing when you have Jackson Storm and Cruz Ramirez actually having a history together, which gives that final race a lot more weight and meaning. You see by Cruz's acceptance of Storm that she's actually grown from that unconfident and maybe even a little bit of a shy character to someone who's very comfortable in their own skin and willing to forgive Storm for his past actions when she sees that he's genuinely trying to change. But I want to hear from you. What did you think of Cars 3? Did you think our tweaks helped the film, or would you have gone about it a completely different way? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great day.